which I saw back towards the beginning of April at the Barbican. So this was a really fun piece. It featured some great dancers and amazing musicians. The piece has the vibe of a jazz club when you enter. At least at the Barbican where I saw it, there is like seats around the edges and the audience can have drinks, but really there wasn't like much time at all for sitting down.
Was it in the main space? Because the Barbican is a brutalist. Where am I?
I think it's like one of the theatre spaces, not the main theatre, like a slightly smaller room. So it added to that jazz club feel. You could go through like this little curtain into it, and then you just enter this other world where the musicians are on the stage. And I think key to the piece, there was a host for the show, and she introduced each piece of music that would be played, gave a little context around them, a little bit of history, and I felt like that was really important in this work, that there was an idea of the background of where this music came from, because it was just so central to what was happening. And I feel like they really took on that element of jazz and of a jazz club vibe. The performers from the start just got everyone up dancing. I knew there was audience participation, but I hadn't appreciated like how much. But I felt like it wasn't awkward and it wasn't forced. I feel really that everyone in the room wanted to be up dancing and they were really in it. And yeah, I think it's just testament to the piece, to the vibe of it, to the energy, that they got a whole room of people enjoying the music, moving together, and just kind of having a party. That was really fun.
I think that's really interesting you say that, because one of the pieces that we'll be reflecting on later is Wind Party, which we also saw and felt like a lot of audience participation. And I wonder if we're seeing like more of it.
I think there's so many ways that audience participation happens. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes it feels forced. But I think with this one and with Wind Party, which we'll talk about next, they both felt really integral to the piece and very much a part of it. Yeah, it's great when they work in those ways, when it just adds to what's happening, really.
Because I think as audiences we kind of want that.
Yeah, for sure. It's fun. I mean, I'm also happy to like sit back and enjoy something.
Yeah.
Like I didn't expect to be on my feet so much. I was pretty tired when I went to watch this, and I was like, I've got to dance. But also then the music just like brought that, and it helped you. You just like got going and got into it.
I think you say that like as a dancer, and I wonder if people who come to it without a dance background, whether they have those kind of preconceptions or that kind of like that consciousness of their body, right?
Yeah, so, it's true.
Yeah.
I
think there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously there were people who would sit down, but I felt like with that venue actually, maybe couldn't feel. I don't think you would have felt so involved if you weren't part of like the movement that was happening. I don't know if that depends on an individual's experience. But I felt like there were people who definitely were like non-dancers there, and they were just going for it. Everyone was just loving the music.
And I think that's the real beauty of it, that you can just, however you want to experience it, you can experience it. So
yeah, exactly. And there were moments where you also just got to sit back and then watch the dancers doing their thing. And these were moments of improvisation, obviously played on the element of jazz music, where a lot of that is improvised, which the musicians also had opportunities to do within the scores. And you had this like interplay between the musicians and the dancers in that sense. And I'm not an expert in the music side, so I can't speak for that, but with the dancers, you could see it was very much individual to them. Like each dancer had their own way of moving, and it was very much about their style and how they embodied the music. That was really beautiful to see. And yeah, just to see how each person showed those elements of the music differently, played with the different rhythms, and brought their style through that.
As a dancer, as a performer, that must have been so fun.
It was
just
fun
to
watch, yeah.
like be you and trust your body and like the movement and being totally immersed in the music. That must have been beautiful and lovely to experience as well.
Yeah, it's nice to see someone, I think, with any performance where a dancer's just very much in their body and doing their thing. And yeah, I think as a dancer, it'd be a great piece to like dance and be in, especially with the music, because which really makes that piece. And I think for this work that kind of has quite a loose structure to it, it really relies on the skill of these performers, the musicians and the dancers and the host. But in a way, it just curated a space to showcase all of that, and yeah, I had a fun night. It was great.
So now we're going to move on to the next piece, Womb Party, by Amarnah, Ufuoma, Cleopatra, and Stefania, Pinato. This piece, I first saw it at Choreodrome Sharing in 2022, and then I interviewed Stefania and Amarnah right before the show. So when I went to sort of experience it, I felt really, really kind of close to the piece. I'm really, really excited and enthusiastic. Should we just give a bit of an overview of what it's about? I guess it's a party in the womb, to put it really, really simply. But I guess it's like more broadly speaking and widely speaking, it's a piece about abortion and reproductive rights and healthcare, and I guess just championing people with wombs.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought it was gorgeous.
Yeah, I think, like you've said, it gave this really important topic a space to be discussed. It gave it space, it gave it voice, and a really honest and open way, which I think is super important, because there's just not many opportunities or spaces where you get to hear about women's experience or people with a women's experience of this topic. It's just not given voice to unless it's in the press in like a negative way. It shouldn't be this, it shouldn't be that. But what this piece really showed was that there's not one answer and that it's a different experience for everyone. And yeah, I think that was a really vital thing, a valuable thing to give a perspective on and give space to.
100%. And I think that when we were just chatting before, we were sort of saying that, I mean, we've never experienced a piece like this in a traditional theatre space. It also made me reflect on what we're taught at school, which not great.
Not much at all in my background.
Yeah, same. We were literally, I went to an all-girls school. We were, oh my god, this is going to get really...
We're going on a tangent.
We're getting off on a tangent, but you're told how to put a condom on a fake willy.
Oh, I had a banana, I think, literally.
Your banana?
I think it was literally like that, a bit older, but yeah.
I just remember I think it was taught in like PSHE, and that teacher just got it out. I think it was just nobody was taking it seriously, and I think that something like this, as well as kind of existing in way more theatre spaces and art spaces and venues, the school aspect and because the education aspect is so rich. I think it's in pelvic pursuits. It's a quiz, and you're basically, instead of saying yes, you would sort of use sort of sounds to say which is what you think is the answer.
So it had that game show vibe.
100%.
I hadn't picked up, I don't think, on the night that the title was Pelvic Pursuits, which is great.
Pretty sure.
But there's little elements of comedy and
Yeah,
fun in it, and just gave this game element to what gradually went into more serious conversation, which was a really fun intro.
It was really fun.
Also the facts, how many periods do you have within a lifetime.
I had no idea.
I was like, how do you even estimate that? I definitely got the answer wrong, I think.
I did get the answer wrong. But I think, so the piece itself, it kind of starts off with these kind of quiz elements, but also it's very, very fun. It's like you're starting to sort of come into a party. You walk through the cervix, I think it is, and I think me and Fran were taking selfies. And I do remember Stefania going, take selfies, and we were like, yay! And it really sets a really fun, sort of joyful tone.
Yeah, it was definitely coming into a party.
100%.
that opening like curtain space and the design of a lot of materials that made the kind of womb environment.
Exactly. And then it kind of goes into the much sort of like harder topic of abortion and, you know, the terrible experiences that people with wombs have. And there are voiceovers, and it's so powerful and so strong, and you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I need to do something needs to change, and you kind of really get that visceral kind of response.
I think those voiceovers really like added to that, in that it was different women's voices, different people's voices, given this perspective, given the anecdote of their experience, and that everyone's was completely different, and some supportive, but most of them not.
And I think that even that is because so often when, you know, women and people with wombs go to the doctors, like, your voice is just totally shut off and cut off, and you don't feel like you can speak, and you don't feel like you can be frank because of the judgment that you might face. And I feel like even in this piece, like, Women Party really acknowledged like the small things and also the larger things. It was so nuanced, and I think that its intentions to have fun, be joyful, to educate and to activate important conversations was so evident. It was wonderful and great. Do we want to chat about the set design?
I enjoyed the set design. I think I mentioned like little fabric, a lot of material fabric element. This is going to be my terrible description, but it had this big
vulva.
Yeah, a big vulva at the back, and then, as I said, I think we entered through like what I believe was to be a cervix. So then it had just different. They had this bag they brought on at one point, pulling out different bits of these materials, and just kind of began to like inhabit the womb.
They really made themselves at home. Conversations.
They did, yeah. I think their like vibe was these two characters who were the womb.
Fanny and Joanna.
They were the womb. But they just had these different ways of being in it. And part of me was like, always wanted them to push those characters more, because sometimes they were themselves, I think, and sometimes those characters. And for me, there wasn't always like the hugest distinction, but I feel like we could have gone for even more in these like over the top inhabitants of the womb.
I think that will probably like come along the more sort of they do it, because I guess it's like a new piece.
Exactly. And I think it's really nice you've had this like journey through the work with it as well, to see it from these different stages, especially when you're trying to like make theatre from such a difficult topic to get into.
Yeah, I remember them saying, I think it was Stefania said that because of the nature of the topic, because I think I asked them, I do remember asking them why humour, and like you can obviously go down a more serious route, but I remember them saying that they felt like the humour was the right path, and I do tend to agree.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it just really worked.
It's that you can still bring home like a really serious point, but by offering it in a lighter way, I think it opens up the conversation more. I think it gives space for that.
I think it makes people feel less, I don't want to say, maybe afraid. I don't know if that's the right word. But yeah, I kind of also want to acknowledge just like all of like the care and the work that went into this piece.
And the little cocktails you got.
And the free cocktails. that was so fun.
But yeah, you can see like they've put a lot of themselves literally into it, and it's really a great thing to bring into a theatre space, and it's a really important thing.
Yeah,
it's great.
And kind of taking, more broadly sort of speaking, I think they've also made like a guide for dancers going through the process of abortion and experiencing abortion.
Yeah, and that felt really important, because it also, I think Stefania said, also how to bring yourself, your body back to fitness and this kind of peak performance level after going through something like that, which I don't believe there is any
rooms. So that in itself, that kind of wider sort of action, I think that's really, really important. And I'm sure other works and performances do that. I'm not aware of any, but I'm sure people are. That feels really, really powerful and meaningful and genuine. So
I think it was very genuine work to see. I'm glad it's out there, having an opportunity to share these stories.
Do a little heart, a millennial heart, not a Gen Z heart, because I can't do that.
So that was Womb Party. And the last piece that we're going to talk about is a piece that I saw, and this was Sasha, Waltz and Guests in C, and that was on at the South Bank Centre. So interestingly, this was another piece that had musicians and dancers on stage together, and really another one where the live music and the musicians were really integral to the piece. I really like having live music. I think for me this is something that is so important in dance and that I don't feel like we get enough of. So I think for me, whenever I see this, I'm like, yes, keep doing this. This makes such a difference. It brings such a different energy. That was one of my big positives about INSEE.
What kind of live music was it?
I should mention actually, it was the London Sinfonietta. So a mix of different instruments. It's quite a small orchestra really. And it was great how integrated they were. Like at the beginning of the piece, all the dancers and what turned out to be the musicians come out on stage and they do all these walking patterns, and gradually the musicians kind of take their seats and start playing, and the dancers begin to start dancing. So we had this nice integration from the very start of it. And I say this piece, it starts slowly. It takes time to build. For me, I had to kind of stick with it, and it got going. But eventually, like these layers of complexity begin to reveal themselves. You see early on, like little phrases of movement, and gradually these get picked up on, they get developed. And sometimes it might be just like a gesture from another dancer that then develops that into a new phrase that suddenly starts. So it begins to build, it has all these different layers, and eventually there's just like so much going on. There's phrases being picked up, there's dancers doing different things, there's dancers moving together and someone else doing another part. And it's quite a big cast, so there's a lot of stuff to engage with. There's also like a lot of info coming at you after a while. It was interesting in that sense.
And does the music build in the same way? And does it happen kind of like in parallel?
I would say
moments where it kind of...
I feel like they are very connected. This is just going from memory, so might be wrong. And also I always have this habit of focusing more on the dance and like kind of getting sucked into the music but not really looking at its structure as much. I wish I had the ability to do a bit more. But there were elements where or moments where they clearly were like super connected. Maybe a dancer would go into the musicians, and there's definitely moments where you hear the music like being picked out with the movement. So it definitely had clear connections in that way. For me, they seem to work in parallel. But
I think it's nice when there's like moments of like discord and disconnection, because that's like, if you think that's part of the liveness of both music and dance, that it's not always.
There's definitely an interplay between the two for sure. And I think probably choreographically and compositionally, both in terms of dance and music, it would have had a lot of detail within that, and some of which I would definitely have missed. But I think in that way it feels very playful, very connected. And it was really necessary throughout for the dancers to be watching each other, for the musicians to be there watching each other. And you could really see that sense of like listening and working together as a company as a whole, not just the dancers in the company, but the dancers and musicians as a whole company, which is pretty cool. I think for me, looking at it from a dancer's perspective was kind of interesting in that I think sometimes maybe it took away a little element for me in that I could see it as like a big group composition task. I can see elements of things you play with in creative processes and classes. And in that sense, I was sometimes like, maybe a bit more blasé about it. But it also didn't take away at all from the complexity of what was happening. There was so much intricacy there and so many layers. And at times it was quite mesmeric watching all that. And just, as I said before, so much to engage with. And I think like
Party vibes, lots of
Party
party
vibes.
vibes.
Yeah. So it's some quite fun works actually, and even though we only saw a few, yeah, a really enjoyable month of watching dance.
Yeah, definitely. And really appreciate the kind of the activism and the joy of Room Party, especially. So, especially the times we're in, like it felt really, really important.
Yeah, it felt very much needed for now.
100%.
Great, and it's really great to see dance that has those fun elements, but also ones that are relevant to contemporary times. And I think dance can offer so many different ways of looking at things, and it was nice to see that in just a few short pieces we saw in April. Yeah. Cool, and thank you, Kate, for joining.
Thank you for having me, Rachel.
April's episode. Hopefully we'll be back in May with some more dance, and another episode of Dance Tapes. Thanks for joining us.